what that might mean?
Okay, so again, that is one of the core 4 principles of the Convention. It comes down to Article 12. So Article 12 is all about saying that states parties shall assure to the child who is capable of forming their own views the ability to express those views freely in all matters affecting the child, the views of the child being given due weight in accordance with the age and maturity of the child. So it's one of the fundamental values of the Convention, but also one of its basic challenges, because in the children's rights movement of the 1970s in the US, the linchpin of that movement was this concept of children's participation. Now, children's participation isn't expressly said of the Convention, but it's a cluster of rights that the Convention implies. So Article 12 implies participation, as does others, Article 13, the right to information, etc., the right to assembly, Article 15. So when I think about the right to be heard, which Article 12 is really essentially talking about, for me I think that is in a sense the most vital child right, because that is telling us how to implement the Convention with children. This is an instrument that can't just be treating children as clients and customers in their own rights. It needs to be treating them as a subject, not an object, not a passive recipient, but an actual actor in the human rights process, because it also implies responsibility. So it's Article 12, the beauty of it shouldn't just be seen as children hysterically declaring their rights and autonomy and those types of ideas. It is actually about that cycle of rights and responsibilities.
So it is important for businesses when they're consulting with communities, for example, in terms of resettlement or the use of their products or access to certain services, that they think about speaking to children as well, hearing that voice. And I think that is starting to increase as businesses, governments, others understand the impacts that business can have on children's rights. But it is something that I think we need to see more of, so that voice can be heard.
Well, the principle that children shall be heard, one of the other 4 guiding principles of the Convention, and I think in terms of general principles it's important to think of them in an institutional sense. What it means is that we have to incorporate those principles in the way that governments and indeed all other organisations do business, so to speak, with children. It means that children have to be front and centre of any legal developments, any policy developments and programs, and ensure that they're able to participate effectively. Now, especially when it comes to government, I think that words like participate always have different types of meanings, and what that means is meaningful engagement, ensuring that the rights of children and the perspectives of children are front and centre of processes.
It's absolutely fundamental, certainly to Plan International's work. This is it's a core principle. It's a core principle of any rights-based approach to international development. That it's a human rights principle around participation, but it's echoed in the way we do our research and analysis, but also our program design, our planning, our evaluation. So for Plan, it's front and centre. We see that evidenced in a number of different ways, and there is increasingly, as the years go by, there is stronger and stronger evidence for the links between effective development outcomes and participatory development planning. So that's it's both an ethical standpoint, but it's also a logistical tool for getting the most out of programs. Our particular interest, as for many on this particular topic, is around the meaningful participation of children and young people. It's the same principle with amplified motivations and additional complexity, I guess. So we have that needs to be managed carefully in terms of child protection and in terms of legitimacy and meaningful participation rather than tokenistic participation of children and young people. But again, where it's done well, we can see it having really positive implications in terms of the ownership and outcomes of development programs here and overseas.